welcome to my channel. This is where I discuss all things podiatry, including the business side of things. I, of course, have no experience in podiatry and in business, so I do this by interviewing the most interesting people. So say hello to our first guest in this post-grad series, Jill Woods. Jill is the founder and owner of Practice Momentum, and Jill also created a remarkable initiative for first-time business startups in Nepal. Wow, can you say fantastic human or what? So stick around to find out how Jill got to this point as we discuss her journey after graduating from Huddersfield, including the challenges she's faced along the way. So hi Jill,
Hello.
How are you?
Hello, my dear. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you so much for saying yes and coming on to this. So first of all, how and why did you start Practice Momentum?
So I originally went into podiatry because I wanted to run my own business. That was really the driving factor. I thought if I can run my own business, it's going to be successful because everybody's got feet. So there's always going to be demand for the services. So that's kind of how and why I kind of started in podiatry. And then when I graduated, I did just that, started my own practice, and I taught podiatry at Huddersfield for many years. So maybe people listening to this remember me from those days. It's a long time ago now, but it's I saw a lot of people come through those doors at Huddersfield University over the years. And then I married, and my husband is in the UK military. And as a consequence, we end up relocating a lot. So I think we've been married for 20 years, and we are now living in our 14th house. So we've moved around an awful lot, and moving around and running a clinical practice doesn't work. I mean, you just couldn't do it and at the time we didn't have the technology to manage things from a distance. If you were running a practice, you pretty much had to be there. So I sold my practice and we started this crazy life, and I had to figure out, like, how do I fulfill myself? How do I still keep going? How do I generate some revenue for myself? And so over the years, I dabbled in some online businesses, some offline businesses, and slowly over time kind of got a bit clear on what I wanted and what I was good at. And eventually, fast forward many years and lots of experimentation, and 2010, and by accident, I started doing social media for a few local businesses, and suddenly they were like, yeah, we'll pay you to do our social media. And I was, really? Like, that's a thing? Bear in mind, this is 2010, so it's quite a while ago. And it was just, and it kind of snowballed from there. And then I realized that although I was working with like any business that would come and talk to me initially, I took a sort of a bit of my own medicine and I niched down, and I realized if I niched back into healthcare, which is what I knew I was good at, I'd run my own private practice. And that was really a turning point for me. And that sort of light bulb moment was, it feels like coming home. It's going to be much easier. I'm going to talk the same language as these people. And that's really kind of the why and how Practice Momentum came to be, because I needed something that was virtual. I needed something I was good at, and I needed something that was going to give me that sense of fulfillment and contribution. And that's kind of how we ended up here with Practice Momentum.
Wow. So what were some of the earlier challenges you faced when you started Practice Momentum? So, I mean, you said that it felt like coming back home, but then sometimes you see someone from home and you're like, oh.
That's a good question.
I don't mean like name dropping. I'm just saying, like, like.
I get that. So I think the challenges for me really were around the fact that my expertise. So I was a marketer before I trained to be a podiatrist. So I worked in marketing and PR in the corporate world for a few years before I retrained into podiatry. And so my grounding is really solid in marketing. But then my next marketing experience was bricks and mortar. I ran my podiatry practice. I ran a holiday letting business in the Peak District in Derbyshire. And so where I taught myself the digital marketing stuff, it was based on bricks and mortar. And Practice Momentum is a virtual business. And that is a very different thing. So running it and operating a virtual team, we're now a team of 9 people all over the world, operating that team and producing a virtual product and marketing a virtual business is incredibly different. And so my learning curve has been really, really steep and quite long, to be honest. Since 2010, when we started, the business has morphed so many times because of our personal circumstances. So when I first started, I was in North London. And in North London, you're surrounded by healthcare practices, like there's loads of them. So finding clients was really easy. And I started by doing like a hotel inspector, and I would go into people's practices and say, they'd be saying, oh, I'm getting all these patients, but they're not coming back. I don't understand. And I'd say, well, have you seen that big stain on the carpet? You know, and it was those kind of conversations. And that worked brilliantly in North London. And then we got relocated from North London to the very north of Scotland. So kind of round about Inverness, where there were fewer people on my doorstep. So I thought, right, I can do this. I can go online. I'll use Skype and I can do coaching, and I can coach people online. And so I started coaching online. That was great. And that started going. And we'd been in Scotland about a year, and my husband came home and said, we're moving to Turkey. I was like, oh, okay. So we go to Turkey. I'm still doing my Skyping, and I'm doing my thing. And the Turkish government just turned the internet off every now and again.
Oh, that's very handy.
Yeah. So I've got these appointments scheduled with my clients, and suddenly I can't get online because they've turned the internet off. I didn't even know that was possible, but it is. So
that can't have been sustainable long term, though. Like, how did you find your way around that?
So basically, that was when I went, right, this has to be completely virtual. I have to be pre-recording stuff. I have to create training programs. I have to do it in a way where people can still access me a little bit, but I am not delivering live the whole product. And that's where we now are at with the business, whereby we have some courses, we have our Thrivers Club where we have monthly meetings. So some of it is live, and I always try and make sure I'm somewhere I can access the internet on those days. But a lot of it is on Facebook, which doesn't have to be in real time, and is pre-recorded stuff which people can download and do in their own time. So it's been a journey, can we just say? So there's been a few obstacles, and then the last obstacle was moving. We bounced around. We got back to the UK, to Australia. We're now in America, in Washington, and we arrived here, and for me to find out that actually it would take 6 months for my authorization to work to come through. So I landed here and couldn't actually work for 6 months. But that was fine because I pre-recorded all this stuff. So it's still kind of, my team were brilliant. They managed the client facing stuff, and we managed to keep the thing going until I could come back online. So yeah, it's been a bit of a journey.
Yeah, goodness. So may I ask, please, and this is more of a technical question, when you left each place, did you have somebody there that was working, that was local, that could kind of, I guess, help with recruiting clientele, for example, or
No.
When you say a team of people, like, where are they located in the places that you'd kind of moved on from, or?
No. Well, yes and no. So when I first started, it was just me. And then relatively early on, I think we started in 2010, and 2011 or 2012, I managed to recruit another army wife that was living across the road from me. And I know he was really good on Facebook. And I was like, oh God, Joe, you need to come and work with me. Like, we need to do this thing. She's actually a radiographer. So she's kind of from a healthcare background. So that was really cool. And she's still with me. She still works with me, which is fantastic. But really, it was Joe and I for a very long time, just spinning all the plates. And it's only relatively recently that I've stopped editing the videos, and I've stopped designing the web pages, and I've stopped, doing all the doing. And it's literally since probably 2000, when we went to Australia. So 2018 was when I started recruiting a team. And since then, we've grown to a team of 9. So we now have team members I'm in the US, we've got UK, we've got Nepal, we've got the Philippines, and we've got Zambia, are our current sort of team locations.
Wow. So I'm glad you brought up Nepal, because I really wanted to talk to you about this. And I think it's the most wholesome thing I've ever heard anybody ever say or do that they are doing. But so tell me about the business loan initiative. So for the first time business owners, how did that, what is it, and how did it come to be, and how did you did you ever think, how am I going to start this up? Or like, what were your thoughts? Just tell me about that whole experience. That's
It's really
just
interesting
amazing.
because now it's up and running and I'm talking to people about it. People are saying, God, how did you do that? That must have been really hard. And if I had not had the experience I will explain in a minute, it would have been really hard. But actually, it was very easy to do because I was really fortunate. When I was teaching podiatry at Huddersfield University, my then boss, Penny Rennick, gave me 5 months sabbatical and said, I clearly had itchy feet. And she said, as long as you've done all your marking before you can go in June and May, you can go in May and you can come back in September, October time. Okay, for the start of the next academic year. So she gifted me some time, and I went to and worked and taught wound care skills in a leprosy hospital out in Nepal. And so I sort of it's one of those places that just gets under your skin. It's a magical place. It's a tough place. It's a really tough place, but it just is magical and it gets under your skin. And the things that they're doing, the lives that they're changing was extraordinary at the time. This was 1999, so it's a long time ago. And it was very much, I call it frontier medicine. You know, we literally were making charcoal dressings from 2 gauze swabs and some wood we'd burnt on the fire the night before. You know, it really was basic medicine and podiatry. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I maintained contact with the hospital and I, you know, sent some money every now and again and what have you, and just kept in touch really. But it became almost kind of part of my identity. You see the Nepali flag up here. And it kind of has become part of my identity and who I am, certainly as a clinician, because I learned so much being out in that kind of environment. But also I wanted then to give back and like, how can I do this? And over time, I sent money and physical donations. And then I was really fortunate in 2017-18, my husband went to Afghanistan for 9 months. And so I'm home alone, I'm running this virtual business. And one day I wake up and think, why don't I go to Nepal? Like I can take my laptop, I can still work because they've got Wi-Fi now. They didn't have Wi-Fi when I was there before, but they've got Wi-Fi now. I can take my laptop and I work. And so I jumped on a plane in November, went out to Nepal and I stayed out there until January, the middle of January, and ran my business from a leprosy hospital in the jungle in Nepal. And I was able in that time to jump back in and do more stuff in the community and understand what the problems were. The hospital now is really well established. They've got lots of facilities, really great local nursing and medical team. But the community support stuff was still lacking and they needed more support. And so gorgeous lady by the name of Lolita, who runs their outreach programs, took me on some really dodgy, like ropey roads out to tiny little villages to basically show me what they were doing. And they were giving money, equivalent of £56 UK sterling, to women who had been impacted by leprosy. And with that £56, these women were buying a second-hand sewing machine or buying a baby goat or 2 baby goats or buying a baby buffalo or those kind of things. And with that really small, literally pocket money, effectively, like, you know, that's somebody's coffee money for a month. They were buying these small assets that they could then turn into a business. Some of them bought a bicycle so they could cycle from village to village selling bananas. Really simple. This is flat Nepal. This is not Himalayan Nepal. This is flat Nepal. So you can buy places. And that was kind of where the seed was sown. And then I kind of got talking to Lolita and she was saying, we need more of these projects, but we can't get funding. And so while I was actually in Nepal, I set up a Just Giving page and said, this is the situation. Like, if we could get some lumps of £56, we could help more women. And basically, if we help these women, we're breaking the cycle of poverty. We're stepping in and saying, we believe in you. As outsiders, we absolutely believe in you, which increases their self-confidence like you wouldn't believe. And we're giving them the wherewithal to start a small business that means they can earn money so that they can support their family and break that cycle of poverty. And that's really where it started, that Just Giving page. And from that Just Giving page, we raised about £2,500. which meant that we could start 2 separate groups, of which we've called our Momentum Club. And we're now in 3 villages because the money keeps getting paid back in, and then we give it back out and it gets paid back in, and we've topped it up a little bit. We've added some more money. And so we're now in 3 villages. My target is to get to 10 villages in the next 3 years, and to just keep giving the women this money, because it's extraordinary what happens. I don't say that lightly. Like, I can't believe what has happened as a consequence of us giving what's a relative small amount of money to these women.
Yeah.
So the one group decided they live in, Lolita calls it abject poverty. They're living in mud huts with straw roofs that blow off in the gales, and they're a family of 5 or 6 in one room. There's no toilet, there's no running water. It's abject poverty. We reckon that on average they earn about £1 a day, roughly. And so we that's what we want to break. We want to get them out of that situation where they're living in these really tough kind of environments, and because they're living in such poor environments, they get sick a lot because they've got no sanitation. Their diet is very poor because they can only afford what's available locally, and often that's very limited because it's very seasonal. And so really we are now changing lives. And the women in one community said, we've had enough of living in these mud huts. We want to live in what they call a cinder block house, which is like breeze block.
Yeah.
And we say house, but it's not a house. It's still one room, but it has a door and it has windows, and therefore they have security. They don't have any security living in a mud hut. And so this one group went to their local government department locally. They kind of walked wherever they had to go and had this meeting, and somehow these women who've been empowered because we've given them £56 each have got this strength from somewhere to lobby their local government to say, we want housing. And they've been able to secure funding for 11 houses for members of our Momentum group.
Wow.
I can't believe it. It's just, and you say 11 houses, that's not very much. It's extraordinary.
But yeah, given where you started, it's brilliant.
Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that's happening. And those ripples then are starting to go out,
Yeah.
And so that's that in I know I've waffled a long time, but in a nutshell, that's the scheme, that's the project. So we're planning on getting out to at least 10 villages in total in the next 3 years, because it's changing lives, literally changing lives, just through £56.
It's really interesting how you mentioned that this is a ripple effect. What do you think is, or what are you hoping is going to be one of the things that come out of this ripple effect? Like one thing that's very, I don't know how to say, maybe abstract?
So, well, the interesting thing for me about this whole thing really is that and it's women, we're only lending to women because history has taught us that men don't, broad brush statement here, but men generally are less reliable with money, and they don't repay the loans. And there's a problem with alcoholism in a lot of these communities, and it's usually the men who are drinking a lot. And so we're purely lending to women. And the thing that to me, in hindsight, is obvious, but to me, the thing that really has shocked me and the ripple effect is how one woman running a very small business. I mean, we're not talking like Tesla, we're selling bananas from the back of a bicycle. How one woman doing that can elevate a whole community. I did not, in my wildest dreams, imagine that would be a thing. That simple act of believing in her, giving her what she sees as my money. It's not my money, but they see it as coming from somebody outside of their world, is trusting them with their own money to take it, turn it into something, and then pay it back. And that act of trust is just what's creating this ripple effect going out from these women. And now what we're seeing in these communities is that some of the men are getting help for their alcohol problems. We're seeing women coming together and being more of a supportive community. We're seeing the wealth of that community growing because suddenly they've got a means of earning money, whereas before they're very most of these people earn money from being the men go out to work and they work as labourers in paddy fields. So they pick rocks out of paddy fields, they weed paddy fields, they maybe harvest the rice when the paddy fields, you know, when it's ripe. It's very, very subsistence, hand to mouth existence, and we're breaking that cycle. And as an example, one lady who was given £56, not by us, by the previous project, but it's just as an example, she bought one baby buffalo and she grew, it was tiny when she got it, and she spent a whole year walking it up and down the verges of the highway so it could graze on the grass, because she didn't own any grass it could graze on. So she literally walked up the highway grazing the grass. And when it was big enough, she started renting it out to local farmers to plough their paddy fields. She's now got like 10 goats, 5 buffalo that she rents out and milks and sells the milk. She's got a child with special needs that she's been able to put into permanent residential care. And when the earthquake hit Nepal years ago, she was able to afford, as a woman, which is extraordinary, with leprosy, to build a whole new house for her family. And that all came from £56.
That is incredibly inspiring,
isn't it? These women are just
absolutely fabulous.
You know,
I feel like, I can, it shows how much you've connected with this. Was there ever a moment where somebody believed in you when you were like, I've not really?
Yes. So in all my journey through Practice Momentum, that, as I explained, it's been a real roller coaster. And when we were living in Turkey, I was sitting at my computer thinking, what am I doing? Like, I can't do this. This is never going to work. Like, it's too hard. Like, how can I keep reinventing my business every time we move house? And literally, as I'm sitting there thinking these things, my email pings, and in comes an email from, his name's just gone out of my head. That's awful. Give me a second. Bear with me. I was literally had it in. Lyndon Jones. So Lyndon Jones. Okay, Lyndon Jones he's very sadly died now, but he was a podiatrist, ran a great practice in, and the practice is still going. His wife Bish is still running it in Salisbury, in the UK. And his email said, basically, Jill, I think what you're doing is amazing. I'm watching what you're doing online. I've seen you present at conferences. You've got a great message. How do I work with you?
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, this is a guy who's running a really great practice already and he wants to work with me.
Yeah.
And that was the turning point for me, totally. And then very quickly on the back of that, I got an email from Diane Ashcroft, who, as we all know now, has turned into the Potty Purple Pod. But she emailed me basically saying, Jill, I need your help. I'm struggling. My business isn't working. I hate it. I don't want to be here. I don't know what to do. And those 2 emails really kind of hit me right at the right moment in time and made me think, I can do this, and B, I need to do this because people need what I can give them.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, those 2 people made the difference.
That's absolutely it's actually really, really impressive to see that not only did you have people reach out and say, like, what you're doing is fantastic, how can I work with you? But you're paying it forward and you're helping these absolutely amazing women. Because somebody did see your worth, the way that you see the worth in these women, and it's a beautiful full circle story, I think.
Yeah.
So what are your next steps, if I may ask? Because I don't think you're slowing down.
No.
I hope you're not slowing down. What is the next step for Jill?
No. So we have historically always been a marketing-based company. So we will teach you how to do your marketing. We can do some of your marketing for you if that's how you prefer to operate. And that has been our core business. And over the last, really since COVID, I've been having lots of conversations with practitioners, and I've kind of realized, and something that really excites me. Don't get me wrong, I love marketing. And healthcare marketing is so fantastic because everybody wins. It's like a total no-brainer to me.
Yeah.
But there is now a piece of the puzzle that has become very clear to me that I know we can fill. And that is around so many practitioners who are currently, some of them are running what to the outside world looks like thriving businesses, but inside they're dying. And some who to the outside world look like they're dying and they're struggling on their feet. And what the theme that's come out from all these people is they're missing some connection. They're feeling disconnected from their practice. They're feeling empty. They're feeling hollow. They're not feeling any kind of fulfillment. They're not feeling like they've got a real purpose behind the practice. It's become a machine. And so what we are now transitioning inside Practice Momentum is we're literally, as we speak, developing a new, we're kind of tweaking an existing program, but we're going to pitch it at these people who are struggling emotionally and want real purpose. So we've called it Practice with Purpose. And we're going to tie all of the stuff that we've been talking together. We're going to talk about creating something bigger than yourself. We're going to talk about doing, paying it forward. We're going to talk about your personal values and ethics. We're going to be talking about your drivers and your vision and your real mission, but at your core, not what somebody wants you to put in a business plan. There's no boxes on a business plan that a bank will give you for this thing. Okay. But it's I've realized it's such an important part of making being in business work. Like you've got to love what you do. You've got to really get some meaning from doing this job. You can't be just a cog in a machine because it doesn't feed your soul. It doesn't bring you joy, doesn't do all of those things. But I know you can do both. And so that is now our new mission inside Practice Momentum, is to start helping people understand that part of that side and being honest about that part of themselves, of what they really want and what really does light them up and what really does make them want to jump out of bed in the morning, and start building that into their business. Because as much as you can tick the boxes on a business plan, yes, I've done cash flow forecast and I've got my marketing plan and I know who my dream client is and all that kind of stuff. If your soul is not being fed by what you do day in, day out, you're dying. And that has now become really important to me, that I support healthcare practitioners in that way by, as I say, pulling all together all of the stuff that I've done and we've done to make it a much more, personal journey.
I love that. I love that. And I think that, so for me, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about brand values, which is kind of similar to, I think that's very similar to what you're talking about. And it's really interesting because I was having this conversation with somebody who does marketing quite a bit. And I was telling him about, like, my podcast and channel and blah, 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 blah. And, I was just, and he was like, so what are your brand values? I was like, what? He's like, what are your brand values? I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, okay, let's start with the basics. What are your values? Yeah. And I was like, what? Like, I was failing to connect those dots, and I had to really just sit down and think, my values and my brand values are synonymous. I'm representing my brand. So my values are going to be, at least I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my values are going to be the same thing as my brand values. I think we finally came down to it, and I had to literally just sit there and think, goodness, what, all the stuff that I've done, like, what has it been for? Like, what are my values? How does this correlate? So I think when you do that, and when you help private practitioners do that, I think it makes such a massive impact. Hi.
Back.
Hi. Did you miss what I said? Oh no.
You said your personal values and your brand values are going to be, and then you just
Synonymous. They're gonna be synonyms. No, I'm joking. Yeah. So, oh gosh, I think I went on a massive tangent. I'm not gonna repeat that. I think I was just being a bit silly. But yes, so I think it's absolutely amazing that you're helping private practitioners find their brand value and find their personal values and help them, create the business that they want for themselves. And just to fall in love with it again, I think that's massive.
Yeah, and that's what I know, like, and it's really interesting because a lot of people that I'm talking to are saying, I really still want to be seeing patients. I still want to be treating patients, but I want it to feel right. And that's the bit that's missing for people. And so, yeah, that whole thing about understanding what your values are, what your drivers are, what your vision is, what your mission is, all of that stuff, you can then start to weave it into how you run the business so that it makes sense to you. And it's not about running it like a business plan. It's about running it how you want it to be.
Yeah, I love that. Do you have any advice for women going into private practice, or anybody going into private practice, actually?
Okay, going into private practice, I would say, so the where I always start with all of my clients is clarity. Because people come to me and say, oh, Jill, like, can you build me a website? And can you teach me how to use social media? And let's do a YouTube channel. And that's all fantastic. Yes, we can do that. Yeah. But let's go back a few steps. What are you trying to create? What do you want to build? Because until we know what the end result is, we don't know if doing a YouTube channel is the right thing, or what do we want the website to look like, because we don't know that, because we don't know where we're going. So I always start, and I would always recommend anybody starting in business, it can change over time. It's not set in stone, but get clear at this moment in time what you want. In your heart, what you want. Okay? Not what your parents think you want or your partner thinks you want. Like, what do you really want this business to be? The patients you're going to see, the interventions you're going to deliver, the environment you want to work in, the kind of money that you want to make. All of those things you need to know before you start. Because with that clarity comes certainty, and you can start saying, if I'm clear on this thing, then I know Instagram, I need to go there, and I need to go to charging these kind of prices for my products, and everything else comes from that knowing what it is you're trying to build. So I would say to anybody going into practice, that's where you need to start, is get really clear on what it is you're building before you start wasting time, money and energy on stuff that's taking you in wrong tangents.
Yeah. That's fabulously put. Well, thank you so much for joining me on my podcast segment. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, and every time I talk to you, it's always just such a great time. And thank you so much for your wisdom. I hope you have a lovely day.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.